3, 2, 1, showtime!
CO, hello, I am Cade Thomas, and welcome to Double Feature Movie Club. This is our 43rd episode, and we're glad for you to join us here. We are talking two offbeat horror films, 2018's In Fabric, it's about a killer dress, and then 2016's The Greasy Strangler. It is about a greasy strangler, and we are excited to talk about that. This week, I am joined with my co-host, Harrison, this week, and our guest, filmmaker, Luca Silver. How you both doing?
Hello, hello.
Oh,
I'm feeling great today.
I'm fabulous.
Great. Yeah. Yes, typically we would, Diane would be on here. We would. This was an exciting. I was honestly very looking forward to this double feature we have here. We've not ever seen the movies that we talk about beforehand, so I don't really know what's in store. But this was weird, and I was looking forward to both of these a lot. We will talk about whether they lived up to expectations or whatever later. But just want to say Diane will be back next week and everything, but I was so hoping to force her to watch Greasy Strangler. So that's a sad situation. but I'm glad that we have here. We have a great panel here, and I'm glad, Luca, thank you for jumping in to do this episode. I appreciate that and everything.
Oh, I appreciate you. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Luca, so last time you were on here, I believe it was the second episode or third. It was early on in the seasons. It was few, we were talking to Olivier Assayas, however you pronounce his name, Kristen Stewart movies. It was Kristen Stewart double feature. Yeah. And in that, you were giving updates about your film. It was an overview, sort of your filmmaking, but just wanted to see if you had any updates of what's going on. You finished a project, right?
Yeah, so, okay, last time I was on this show, it was like late February, I think. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I had just come back from shooting half of the movie Hidden Flora in Las Cruces, New Mexico. That is from the filmmakers Ryan Rocks as the director and Jessica Jimenez as the producer. We are preparing to go back and finish that shooting in July. So I'm getting prepped for that. I'm kind of, assessing what I did before and looking at how to improve for the second half of the shoot. And I expect them to eye an end of the year, finish to the production. And so I'm getting really excited about that. But as soon as I came back from doing Hidden Flora and being in acting world, I switched hats into being director, editor, producer, animator, all these different things on my project, which is called What is Sex? ? And that is, it's sort of a parody of a sex ed video, but done in a really collage, kaleidoscopic sort of art house kind of way. And that was a huge undertaking in the month following, shooting Hidden Flora. It was basically either you hit this deadline and you have a film or you don't. And so I was working day and night with 15 different collaborators, making an entirely original soundtrack, doing animation for the movie, doing live action for the movie, putting everything together. And honestly, it was a really organic experience. So it kind of came out in the end as something that I didn't expect myself, which is really interesting. But when you do that kind of thing, you have to keep your hand on the steering wheel. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or else it becomes a different movie than you set out to make, you know? And so the purpose of making it was to submit it to an art show in Nashville. The art show is called the Sacral Project. It is a multimedia showcase that's centered all around sexuality and intimacy and relationships to your own body and your own sexuality and stuff like that. I hit the deadline. I got the film done. I submitted it on time. Everybody was happy, and then we just had to wait and just find out if the purpose of making this was gonna, sort of like come true. And I got into the show, and we did it. And so now I'm just preparing for June 22nd at the Nashville Backlot Studios, which is where the event is going to be. June 22nd, Sacral Project. They're doing a screening of not only my film, but a ton of other Nashville artists, especially people who are Black and brown and queer and, sort of a counter programming to some of the shows that are normally put on in public,
It's exciting.
Yeah. So we're really, really happy that we got in. Now the idea is to refine and refine and refine and make it the best version of the film that it can be. And I think it can be a little stronger than it is right now. So that's kind of like my priority right now, leading up to go shoot Hidden Flora, is work on What Is Sex, work on the album. Because I think it'd be great to release the original soundtrack as an album too. That'd be kind of a dream,
Yeah.
make a movie with a whole original soundtrack. That's pretty cool. And maybe in the process, figure out how to make some money from making a film, because I don't know how to do that yet. And that's kind of difficult sometimes.
I mean, people have trouble with that in general on every level. That is very, very true. So how long is the project?
So the version that I submitted to the Sacral Project, the one that's going to screen, is about 8 minutes long. And due to like sort of the tone of the film, it's very like switching channels on the TV. It's like one type of film and then it turns into something else, and then it turns into something else. So it's a fast pace. There's like a ton just packed into 8 minutes. I think for the final version of it, like the third version, I think it could be built out a little bit more and given a little bit more room to breathe, seeing as like there would be no time limit if I did a new version, And I think like the contrast between maybe like the pacing could get better, It doesn't have to be, it could be up and down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think pacing is so important, and that's something that I want to talk about when we get to the Greasy Strangler, is pacing, because that is such an intuitive, sort of like difficult thing to do in filmmaking, is to figure out the rhythms, and so that's kind of like the mode that I'm in right now, is like, how do I take the audience on the journey instead of just assaulting them with a bunch of shit all the time,
Yeah. No, that's true. Pacing is one of the most important things, and that's
as true in film as in sex.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I will say, in terms of funding, the best advice I've heard in the film industry from anybody is make it someone else's problem.
Yeah. Don't
in all
invest
honesty,
your own money.
Yeah, like producers. How do you even function in this day and age? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Hats off to you for putting like down so much risk. Well done, but man, that is not the life for me. And I think a lot of filmmakers are happy to make it someone else's problem.
Yeah, I think I'm at a point where I'm.
Oof. We've lost him. Well,
he ran off to get a producer.
There we go.
Oh my God.
You're back.
Welcome back.
I should mention to everyone watching, I'm having a little Wi-Fi issue. Sorry about that.
No problem. Harrison made a joke that you ran off to get a producer.
Yeah.
You know what?
I figured
You convinced me. Let's go.
No, I feel like I'm at a point in, the like filmmaking journey where I want to figure out how to support myself doing this. I want this to be my full-time job. But it's hard to maybe turn art sometimes into cash, like on the back end. You've made the thing, you've produced the thing, you have it in your hands, and you're like, how do I use this to get food and pay rent?
Yes.
So that's what's on my mind. But all these projects are kind of swirling around each other and maybe informing each other in a way. Hidden Flora is also about some of the themes that I'm also thinking about for What is Sex. So I feel like both of those projects are kind of like going at a good pace, and I'm really excited to get back to them.
That is exciting. Well, keep us updated. I would say, we're going to go on break here on Double Feature Movie Club in the summer, but and then we'll be back in the fall. But we'd love to have you on to get updates on everything and plugging things as they're finished and everything. So I would love to have you back on, Luca, when we come back later in the year.
Anytime.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, anything else we were going to discuss sort of like upcoming films. Before we got on, we were talking about Killers of the Flower Moon and the sort of ramp up of that from Cannes Film Festival. And that was very exciting. I mean, it's exciting to see it. The trailer is a really beautifully edited trailer. I really do. I thought that was really powerful. And Who Are the Wolves in this picture is already kind of becoming a thing within Native.
I've been saying that to myself as like I walk around my house, just like this picture.
Yeah. It's exciting.
What kind of movies are y'all excited about in 2023 that's like on the horizon?
To me, the two, I'll jump in first, Harrison, while you think about that. I'm really excited for Oppenheimer. I think that looks really great and everything. And then secondly, I'm excited for the Barbie movie.
Hell yeah.
Those two are my top two currently.
Double feature.
Coming out the same day.
Same day, same theater. Just go from one to the next.
Yeah.
But which do you think you would watch first if you did a double feature?
It's a good question because I don't know how long Oppenheimer is, but I imagine it's pretty long. And then so it's like it becomes where do you want you almost use Barbie as like a palate cleanser, but it's also like I don't know. I think you'd watch. I don't know. I think you'd watch Barbie first, just because it's fun and light, and then you get into the you can settle in to it. Because you think about you want to watch Barbie during the day, so you watch it like an early afternoon, and then you go into the evening and you watch Oppenheimer.
I mean, you say that now, but Ken could honestly be J. Robert Oppenheimer in disguise, and then you get this whole arc of like him pressing the nuke, and it's just.
I'd like to think that this is
psychiatrist. That thing with like him poisoning his colleague. Man, it's honestly, that movie's going to be great. Personally, I'm stuck in the 2010s and 2000s as far as film is concerned. I'm not very excited about too many movies these days. The last movie I was genuinely that genuinely excited me that I didn't know about before I like went in to watch it. Probably Under the Skin, and then before that, yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot
Under
of
the Skin 2013.
Yeah. I mean, we watched it for the show and everything here recently, so I don't.
Exactly.
I see. I thought you meant it'd been a decade since you had got inspired.
Yeah, no. If that were the case, no, I would not be here. I would not be here. I would be doing another podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really hype about the new Wes Anderson. I think that's going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
I love that he's like doing sort of a desert aesthetic because I'm from New Mexico. So it's kind of nice to see like an environment like that, but through his particular lens, which is cool.
Yes.
I like when he switches it up and like goes to different locations, you know?
Yes. And I think that's a really
Um,
For
cool
real.
aesthetic to meet, like this sort of mid-century, like that atomic era, through the lens. Yeah, alien
Definitely.
sort of things. That's cool.
It'd be like a fun game to play to go like, where should we send Wes Anderson to next? Like to make a movie, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Wes Anderson in space or, you know, something like that.
And then we get a kitschy Where's Waldo book out of it. It's just Where's Wes.
It's
Yeah,
just-
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I
Um,
find interesting about him, you hear a lot of actors who say like his even the filming around them are experiences. Like he's so like he brings the full ensemble and like they're all there, and like the environment that he creates on set is very interesting, and it's a whole experience beyond just making of the film. So
Yeah, that's something that's super inspiring,
mhm,
from as somebody who like wants to learn more about like the craft of directing.
mhm,
I feel like a part of it is not even what you see necessarily on screen. It's like the environment that you can create for the people who are making the movie. And that
mhm,
environment, however good or bad, will then translate onto the movie screen.
mhm,
So it's
Like,
so cool to see people who can build families and build like a summer camp or you know what I mean? That
mhm.
kind of environment.
mhm.
Yes. That's what they all say. It's like it's great, and like because he uses a lot of the similar actors, and it's just a really, it's there. They always like jump at the chance to make his film because the experience that he makes around it is so interesting.
Yeah.
Similarly, Florence
It's
Pugh
like,
said that working with Christopher Nolan in this on Oppenheimer was like her best experience with a director because of just how well he knew how
Mm.
to direct a set and everything.
Well,
it seems like being
speaking
the
of
leader of
Pew, I
like a
gotta mention
three-ring
him.
circus, and you get
Yeah,
to
yeah.
like entertain the audience as much as you get to entertain the performers.
Yeah. Mhm. We.
Yeah, exactly. Building a family. I was just thinking about Dune because of Florence Pugh.
Mm-hmm.
Dune Part 2 looks so dope. I finished the book like after the first Dune had come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, God damn, how am I gonna wait like 3 years to see like the second half? But they were talking about the second half as like, oh, the second half of the book is like when shit like really gets going, you
Yeah.
know? And the first half was like all set up. So now I'm like, okay, we're about to be in for it, you know?
Yeah. I think a lot of people who watch the read the book and then watch the movie. I haven't read Dune, but it seems like a huge undertaking. But people were like, oh, it's they're kind of were disappointed, like, oh, that's it. We're gonna leave off whenever it just was before the turning point and everything. Yeah.
I'm
So.
really fascinated to see how they do certain sequences that take place entirely in like an inner space. There's certain like scenes in the second half of the Dune book that are entirely internal,
Hmm.
and like I just wonder how they're going to depict that because sometimes you could just go like dream language, you know, oh, just cut to different like surreal sort of imagery,
Hmm.
Hmm.
but you know, I feel like maybe there's a more creative way to do it also. And so I want to see what Villeneuve comes up with because he's pretty creative when it comes to the cinema of it all, you know.
Hmm.
And the last thing I'll mention is that I'm really excited about there's a 4K restoration of Stop Making Sense by the Talking Heads
Yes.
that's coming out this year from A24. And if I get a chance to see that in a movie theater, I will die happy.
Mm.
That is one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. And it made me a fan of the Talking Heads. And I'm so excited to watch that. I'm
Well.
dying.
You've hit on something there that we a huge Talking Heads fan.
Yeah.
So yes, I am very excited. And great little promo that they did with David Byrne where he's getting his
Yeah.
suit from the dry cleaner. But yeah, no, I'm excited. Well, the thing about it is that album and Burning. Speaking in Tongues, and which it was based on, and even that live recording, they were the way that they recorded music was so innovative at the time, and that's why they're able to sort of routinely remaster them in interesting ways. Is because like it's different than like, and they use like these really like high grade machines to record like each thing separate. I don't know enough about audio engineering like that to know, but people have, I've read interesting things about how those how they recorded it and how it was unique and how they're able to sort of do this better than a lot of other musicians. They have to almost re-record things because of how they recorded it back in the day.
Yeah, there's an album coming out alongside it too. I think a remaster of the album as well.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I just thought of a question I wanted to ask y'all that may lead us a little bit into like the topic today, because it's maybe a similar, I don't know, there's just some similar themes maybe in what we watched versus the movie I want to ask you about, which is, have you both seen Beau is Afraid?
I
Nope.
have.
Okay. Then we won't go too in depth, but like, don't you see maybe like a little crossover between like Greasy Strangler and like Beau?
Just a little bit. Yeah. It's in the attic
In terms
and
of
everything.
like a purposefully uncomfortable experience, like unpleasant movie.
Yes.
You know?
Beau is Afraid is very fascinating. Like I've it's really stuck with me in a way that like other film, and it is by far, it's definitely my third favorite Ari Aster movie. I love the other two so much. Yeah, so it's not, but that's also like, ridiculous to compare them. I feel like to those two films because of just how perfect I think those are. So, but obviously it's newer to me, and so I haven't really. But yeah, it's very fascinating, and what I find fascinating about his works is like how you can start to see like patterns. I love when you start to see a filmmaker go throughout. Now it's his third film, and you're like, okay, so that's a pattern now, where his first acts of the movies, they just keep getting sort of longer or whatever. But this one has a really extended first act, but they're almost different films than the rest of the film is, and so like they almost work on their own. Like Midsummer, no one ever talks about Midsummer's first act, of how it's like a completely different like horror film, and it's like set at night, and it's like the opening scene, and then her going out, like all that is a completely different film, and everyone always talks about the second and third acts of Midsummer, but never the first act. And this one has the first
like
act,
five acts.
He might technically have 5 acts. But yeah, the whole where he's at his apartment and all that stuff's just completely different, and it's fascinating. It's a very and it's really stuck with me, and each part is really like, that's really interesting, because it's told in Harrison's, just these completely different acts, and it shifts and goes in different ways and explores different things, and
it's an odyssey.
Yes,
it refuses to like stay the same movie as you watch it. And for some of the friends that I went and saw it with, I'll mention like for some of the people that I saw it with, they liked one of the movies that was in this movie.
Yeah.
And they didn't like the rest of the movies that were in the movie. And they wanted it to stay one thing, and it kept changing on them. And I think that upset them. I walked out of the theater going like,
which ones they like?
They loved the beginning in the city environment. And because first of all, it was like a focus on humor. I think that connected with them. There was an energy to it. There was a fast-pacedness to it.
Yes.
And also like it's your introduction to the whole world, so you still feel like you are on some sort of a stable ground. You're like, I'm just getting into it.
That's the one he feels like he's actually saying some sort of commentary about our world, and that really is never the case after that. Like after, he's like, and that's not what we're talking about anymore. It's about him, and so that and that's where it like shifts. And to me, that last part, before the boat, but all the other stuff, I don't want to spoil anything. Parker Posey's part in this movie. Oh my God. Like I love Parker Posey so much. And when she was, when I learned she was in this, and then like her role, that is one of the bravest roles I've seen in a long time. And it is all of that. And then what happens after that is just spectacular. It's the point of the film. And I love that part.
Just when you think the movie's like run out of ways to surprise you, it just comes up with like 7 more.
This is a
Um,
movie I'm definitely interested in now.
Mm,
Epics in general, like
yeah.
that is a genre flaw where there are usually a few acts and people really only get into one or two of them.
mhm.
Um, but greatness in filmmaking, like if you can shift tone, if you can shift even the way you're telling the story, like right in the middle of the movie, and it can still be masterful, that's where I start paying attention.
Mm.
Um, I think I love the subtlety of the two acts of In Fabric, which we'll talk about later.
Mhm.
It
I'm so ahead
shifts
of you.
so right. It shifts so subtly and beautifully.
Mhm.
I don't know about the shifts in Beau is Afraid. Um, some filmmakers like to say this is part one, this is part two, this is part
Mhm.
three. Suspiria did that. The new Suspiria did that extremely well.
I dug
Um,
that. That was awesome. I love
yeah,
that.
Beau's Afraid has hardship. Like it's pretty clear which parts
Yeah.
are in this
Mhm.
section and like in because the whole setting changes and everything, and the supporting characters around them change.
Yeah. But it's not
Nathan,
yeah,
told like a storybook like a Wes Anderson kind of thing. It's
yes.
more like you're locked into Beau's perspective. And
Mhm.
so there are like hard cuts where like, okay, Beau is in like a different headspace now, and now you're in a different headspace. Now you're in a different
Right.
headspace.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I my second favorite one is like the Nathan Lane section. I end
Oh
up
yeah.
really liking where that ends. That
Yeah.
is I really like the situation that he's
It's
in there.
it's all coming back now. It's all coming back now.
And that is so like visceral of like this family structure that he gets put in the middle of that it
Yeah.
was like it was uncomfortable, but I absolutely love that.
Also,
So
really really quotable movie though. Like I've been
mhm.
walking around doing the teenage daughter's lines like just going like, "Why won't you get fucking fucked up with me?" Like, saying
Yeah.
funny things like that. Ari Aster has like a good knack for writing like dialogue that sounds unnatural in a way where sometimes people sound unnatural. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Sometimes people don't say like the right thing at the right moment, or they switch two words around on accident, and it's just an accident in real life, but he has a way of like writing that organically into a scene where it makes it a little bit funny, like
Mhm.
saying fucking fucked up or something like
Mhm.
that. Or in Hereditary when she goes, that face on your face,
Yeah.
you know and I kind of found, something similar to in the Greasy Strangler, although the Greasy Strangler pushed that like to its extreme,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
it's like you are literally reading off of a piece of paper right now. Like that's what it sounds like. You're not a real human being, you
the
know?
the horror
As
house
opposed
line
to
is one of my favorite things where he's like yelling at him. He's like, he's like, you're gonna. I don't even remember the line, but I'm like that line read is one of the most
Yeah.
spectacular line reads. But okay, we do need to get started here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we have our two films we're talking about for Offbeat Horror Night. It is In Fabric from 2018 and 2016's Greasy Strangler. First is In Fabric. I will give the brief plot synopsis of that movie, and then we'll jump into the conversation there. This short little musical interlude.
This one's
No,
you,
no,
Cade.
no. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Here we go. I had it messed up there. Here we are. Thank you, Harrison. That was on
Back to you, Cade.
purpose. I loved Harrison's confused face there. That was all intentional. In Fabric is a 2018 British horror comedy of sorts. We'll kind of talk about that in a moment. It's written and directed by Peter Strickland. He's done a few other films. Before this, he did Barbarian Sound Studio, which we talked about earlier on in this on this season. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, you can check that out. This movie stars Marianne Jean-Baptiste. She plays Sheila. She's a recently divorced bank teller. She lives with her teenage son, who is dating a much older Gwendolyn Christie. Sheila starts going out on some dates, and she goes to a upscale department store, and she buys this red dress, of which she's told there is only one of. The movie takes place in the past. It's sort of unclear. It's purposely unclear. I looked it up, and Peter Strickland said it was supposed to be like January of 1993, but there's some things that look some mid-century and almost 1960s. So it's not the present day. And there's retro commercials, and there's catalogs, a lot to do with fashion catalogs and everything. Anyways, she buys the dress, and she starts having a rash after she wears it. She puts it in a washing machine. The washing machine explodes. So the dress has a mind of its own and is perhaps being controlled by the women who work at the department store, one woman in particular. But so the dress starts acting crazy, and that's the initial plot of In Fabric.
That's Act 1.
That's Act 1. That's Act 1. Yes, that is. This movie takes some interesting things. We'll prepare you when we start talking about the shifts there. But yes, that is the beginning of the film. She starts getting scared of this dress and tries to return it.
Act 2 could really be like just a text overlay on the ass cheeks of the stag party whenever they come up to the window of the restaurant. That's Act 2. That's really when it begins.
just use Act 2 to appear on that. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
although it should be said, Act 2 starts like, if not halfway, a little bit over halfway through the movie,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of interesting. You spend so much time with her, and then it just becomes a different movie. You know?
Yes. This movie's told, I mean, you could sort of say, I mean, I always talk about act structure. I think, yeah, so you're clued in, it's a 2-act structure. I guess you can sort of say that. There's multiple acts within that. You could say it maybe has a weird 5-act structure almost. And the last 2 acts are the one we're talking about. It's the second act. You could break it up in different ways. Because you're right, it is well into the movie that shift happens, and I do think there's a sort of split between him and then his wife, who are soon to be wife or whatever, where that shifts, and maybe that's the 5th act. And so, anyways, that's not important right now. Anyways, so we'll start with Luca. What did you think about this movie? Just broad strokes. What did you like, and what did you think about it?
So I watched the Greasy Strangler first, and then I watched In Fabric after. In Fabric was a tonic to the Greasy Strangler. I was so happy that it was like very languid, and like it loved to just sort of like sit in different compositions, you know. I loved the sound design, and like the first thing that sort of struck me was like the giallo of it all, you know, the genre pastiche, because I love giallo movies so much. There was a period of time a couple years ago when I first sort of like discovered giallo, and that was about like all I watched for months and months, because it sort of just opened up this whole world that I had no idea about. And I was like, you can make horror movies that are like Technicolor and really, you know, operatic and fun to watch, you know? So, I love those aesthetics. I love that cutting style. I love that style of like sound design too. I love those kinds of stories. It really upset me it made me care about the main character, and then awful, horrible things just happened to her over the course of the time, and that made me really upset. But good on them for making me care about her. I was a little upset when it switched characters. I will not lie. I was kind of like, well, damn, like, you know, I was really invested in that one. But, you know, by the end of it, I think thematically it wrapped up in such a way where I was like, okay, I see the connective tissue, and I suppose it was worth it to switch. but I gotta say I really preferred the Marianne Jean Baptiste's part to the
Yeah.
second act. Um, I wrote a bunch of notes on it, so maybe through the course of the thing we'll get to them. But the first one that I wrote was Giallo. Is it just a pastiche, or does it fully exist in the Giallo genre on its own? Is it just playing with those aesthetics, or does it commit to being one of those movies? I think by the end it does commit to being one of those movies. But there are times where there's a certain separation, that it almost feels like it's hesitant to be itself. I
Mm-hmm.
wish it maybe had a little bit more fun, and like it loved to be itself, and like let's really go for it.
You could call it
Although
a
all the
British
tropey stuff is good.
giallo.
Yeah, British giallo, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe the Britishness of it all is that restraint and that like discipline of like, we're not going to fully commit like the Italians do,
Yeah.
but we're going to, play in this world. It reminded me of,
Unless your name is Gwendolyn Christie, in which case you do not move a muscle as you're modeling and introduced into the scene. It is
her
just like
eyes, her eyes.
it's so intense and so perfect that,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that if
One
that's
movie
another
that
British thing about it. If you're going to do it, you do it so over the top and so perfectly, or you just make fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wondered if there was like an ironic detachment to it. I'm
So
not sure. That's sort of a question for the table. But I will say, it reminded me of another British giallo, Peeping Tom, from Michael Powell. That was a movie that sort of like came out before all of this stuff. I mean, before Psycho, even so, it's like a completely different era. But it still has the genre stylings. It still has the colorful palette, but it's got that British sense of like distance from the subject.
Yes.
For sure.
The So you like the film, right?
I dug the shit out of it.
Okay, great. And Harrison, what did you like the film?
I liked the film. I loved the cinematography.
Yeah.
I adored the quick cuts between the department store photographs and newspaper clippings and
Those
all
like
of that.
interludes with the hand, with the.
They were so fast, but their timing was always meant to kind of throw you off just a little bit. It was never the same kind of, well, maybe it was a quarter of a second, maybe it was half a second here. It was meant to, like, you not only get the sense of nostalgia, but you also get that necessary element in horror, which is you feel a little bit uncomfortable looking through it. And the dialogue was so masterfully done in the department store. All of the employees, just this heightened Victorian English. It was the movie does so many things really well. It is just a simple horror story, but it also it shines in so many ways that I'm like, is this movie like great? No, I don't think it. Like, I never at any point thought it was great, but there are so many great things in it.
Yeah, I agree. There was it. I would like the movie a lot. There was certain parts of it that I was like, it could be better and everything like that. But the pacing of it, I thought, I mean, it's intentionally methodical and everything. There were interesting choices in it that, I agree. The first protagonist was much stronger. Show me what happened with the family. I mean, I feel like some movies, I'm like, I want to know the repercussions of things. Like, I think that's so much more interesting at times, is like, okay, they're showing what happened. Now what happened after and what was the impact of these things? Like, the way I assumed was that the dress would then like go like Gwendolyn Christie or what, like it would have stayed in that group or whatever. And so you don't even see how the son reacts to that or how that changes. I mean, I think there would be a perfect way of like, okay, perhaps then you follow with his father, because that's been mentioned in perhaps a new lover of his, so that there's stuff there that you could have dealt with the repercussions a lot more, and it still could have been within the themes of the movie. I mean, essentially, what you just need is the final act to take place for and the department store. Like, you need to get someone in there for that to happen. It doesn't matter who. It didn't really matter who. But they decide to focus quite heavily on washing machine repair. and
then instead of the father coming in and the family story being continued in an interesting way, no, you get a sweatshop callback. Everybody's just at the sewing machine making the red dress.
Which that was interesting. At the end, you're talking about the end thing. That was very visually interesting. But to me, so another flaw of the film. I loved the opening credits. I thought that was all really cool in the music. However, it does ruin the surprise of a lot of some of our more like visceral imagery that comes along in the movie. It's like, oh, that would have been a nice surprise later, or it's like, because like you don't know when you're watching it that these are the shots of the film, and
Right.
and then but once you sort of realize that, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that shot from earlier, and it's kind of like.
Yeah.
It's a highlight reel of the best shots of the movie, and it's in the first minute of the movie, and it's like, yeah.
I like that as like a trope of giallo movies, to have this sense of like inevitability. I think adding those shots at the beginning of the movie sort of make it feel like all of this is destined to happen.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I agree.
I do appreciate when a movie has an opening credit sequence these days. This is a goddamn lost art form. We need to bring back a credit sequence.
Absolutely. So
More movies.
Barbarian Sound Studio, it was by far the best part of the movie, and it deals with a lot with giallo as well, and because it takes place in an Italian horror studio. And it's Toby Jones, and he's in this. He's working in like the post production, just he's a Foley artist for the movie, and so you never see the actual movie that they're working on. But the sequence is very much like like kind of how like they do with the catalogs and everything, and it's all that, and it's very visual, and it's one of the most interesting. It's obviously a reference to these older films, but I think something like that could have been just as interesting here as well. But I don't know. Yeah, I do agree. It did add to the inevitability of it and everything. But yeah, other notes. Yeah, you said the interludes were really interesting.
The sound design was gorgeous in this movie. Like the scene with the washing machine gone out of control with the red dress inside of it, the first one. I felt the palpable like horror of the everyday. Like it came across beautifully. Like I thought the washing machine was like all corners of my room that I was watching this. So yeah, it was pretty good.
She cut her hand, like all that was very like yeah.
I got legit scared by a washing machine. That's pretty. That's a point towards the movie, There was like a punchiness to the sound design of like the washing machine, like throwing it around, that really made you feel like the weight of the object.
That's got to be a hard scene to shoot as well. Like to somehow make a machine do that and then make it safe for an actor.
Get with that washing machine? Yeah. How many takes can you get?
Yeah, I don't know. And how do you rig that up? Is it all manual, or do you have some sort of automatic? I don't know. That's a.
How many repairman videos did the director watch before? Because man, it worked its way into gosh.
Or the production just had like 10 washing machines off to the side, ready to load them in for the next take.
For real.
I was gonna say, the like jagged editing style and the sound design, that oftentimes even a lot of the dialogue, it sounded like it was done in post-production as a purposeful, like stylistic choice, because a lot of those giallo movies from back in the day were dubbed over because they would just allow people to speak whatever language they spoke. It was like international casts and stuff, right? So I really thought that all of that kind of aided in this like cool contrast that made me think about the like what are the core tenets of like the giallo genre in general, like what forms this circle that things go into. I think one of the things that this movie brought up for me was the contrast between beauty and like violence, and the cinematography is like aggressively beautiful in a lot of these giallo movies. That's like a core tenet of the genre, is that it has to look
Mhm.
pretty. It has to look beautiful and colorful, and especially with the color red. There's a certain particular giallo red, and it's only that shade. And if you don't get that shade, then it doesn't have the same feeling. And I think that they got the shade of red right on the money. Like, it was a good red of the dress.
Mm-hmm.
When she cuts her arm in a certain scene, the blood looked like paint, which I think is another like sort of core tenet of the giallo genre, is like unrealistic looking effects, which kind of add to like a charm. But I think the most important part of all of that is that the beautiful cinematography is contrasted with super violent editing and super violent sound design. And
Mhm.
by violent, I mean jagged cuts, sometimes like mismatched audio and picture, and a disorienting sense of like pacing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I'm not sure if it's been a year or if it's been 2 days or how much time. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
if this is a dream or a memory or a present reality. um, the movie kind of throws you around in certain regards, but
And I
it's
think the
anchored
setting
by
does that as well. Like we're saying, like it's
yes,
unclear even when. And I love a film that is an
Yeah.
ambiguous time frame.
and also like the nature of the characters too. Like
Mm-hmm.
the people who owned that shop. It's not like Suspiria where by the
Mm-hmm.
end of it you're like, okay, it's a witch coven and they want to
Mm.
do that. You know what I mean?
It's
It's like
unclear.
by the end of it, I was like, oh, they just do that. They just like to do this stuff.
And what's you're not even really sure what the power structure is there either. Like the
Right.
guy's in charge, but like
The old man who
yeah,
was like
but
having an orgasm in one scene, like
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Maybe
that
they just really love their jobs.
Yeah, you know?
but then the one lady seems to be I mean, it does seem to be wit. I mean, it does seem it hints at a few different
It's
things. Like
witchy.
it's
It's witchy.
witchy, but then
Yeah.
Yeah.
in his roles, yeah.
And it feels like there's a male character towards the end that the head other male character who's touching himself, watching people like play with mannequins.
Oh,
There's
yeah, yeah,
another
That's
male
in this
character that
movie.
seems like his only job is to like stand in a corner and look at the corner, and he turns around at one bit of like arguments between gosh, what's her name? The dryer repairman's fiance.
hmm
Uh, he's just like, no, turn around.
yeah.
Yeah.
What was her name? What was that character's name? Jill?
Jill.
Reggie and Jill?
Mm,
No?
yeah, I
Perhaps
can't remember.
I don't remember. Yeah,
I
it
found
was.
out that the witchy lady at the department store was named Miss Luckmore,
Mm,
which I guess is
Ooh,
kind of thematic for the dress.
yeah.
yeah. So the dress. I mean, it's revealed in the thing that the dress it was wore by a model, and then she ended up dying, and then that was they only made had the one dress. The dress
Yeah.
design's really beautiful. The way it flows into the air, it's really like it's that they do a lot of shots of it hanging or floating, and it's really beautiful
I
and
loved how
scary.
it would move on its own. That was like a cool sort of just like DIY
Hmm
effect. They probably put like a string on the dress and just pulled it out of a room, but
Yes.
it really
Mm,
made the dress feel like its own malevolent force.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
The
it's kind of similar later in Nope when you see that sort of the cloud or the creature there, and
Yeah.
that's there is a float like the sort of that is an interesting effect that is scary and haunting and also beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like in that sense, it wasn't just a pastiche of the like giallo thing. Like it was actually committed to it and doing it and pulling it off, in a great way. I really like noticed the use of like long lenses in a bunch of
Yeah.
scenes. You would be standing at the back of a room and there would be all these people passing in front of the camera. You're just sort of like watching somebody from afar. I think
I would
that added
posit
to
where
a
it
sense of dread.
does, like where it does giallo best. You talked about it earlier. It's in the language in terms of it seems like people are not talking in their own language throughout the movie, and yet everything seems so precise and like tucked in extremely well. It's so disorienting, but that's like almost the only thing I want to talk about in this movie because it's so well done and it's like they're so committed to it. Not only in the department store, but at the bank.
Mm. Oh,
The
fuck.
bank-
Those
the
guys.
two bank managers.
Let's talk
just,
about that.
God.
So that's almost different, right? I mean, it's almost so like to me, like so. There's the giallo stuff, and those are put in different. Like you think of like, yeah, when she did the pneumatic tube, and they're sitting there, and there's just people passing through, and that's one of my favorite things is where she just asks her a question, and then she just takes in the information, and then it's just I guess she's just sitting there in silence while all those people are passing, and. And so there's that. There's the car scene. There's a lot of different little moments that are, and then it's pieced together by like this sort of character drama that's about like this woman and her son and her new boyfriend, and like that stuff's, I wouldn't say fits into that. It's almost more of like a character drama stuff that's there.
Yeah. The two bank managers stitch the two main characters.
And then you have this bank manager stuff that is part of it that is almost, I mean, that is comedic. Like their scenes are purposefully comedic and in a way that like those scenes stick out as odd.
But also horrific in its own way,
Yes.
I was so fucking uncomfortable during those scenes.
Yes.
Just the corporate sort of speak and like the veiled way that they talk to each other. Ugh, it was disgusting.
The part where they have to dissect how she waves at a boss's mistress, and the mistress of a boss is technically considered a superior. So,
how did they phrase it?
She was a little put off by your, casual wave or something like that.
Yeah, the
casualness. It wasn't as formal as she wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I wrote down, she urged us to term it as insolent salutation, but she gets ahead of herself sometimes. And making that an issue at work is again, quotidian horror. Like, it's definitely exaggerated, but not by much in corporate speak.
Yes, it was interesting. It was that whole, and then the fact that they're like interrogating her about her dreams, and then later they do the same thing to that guy, like that.
They offered to role play both with her and with the repair salesman.
Yes, they really wanted that. They really wanted someone to take them up on like a role play scenario. That was
And the thing about them that like really made me curious was how they get hypnotized by like the almost, I don't know, is it advertising or is it just like trade speak? Like remember how the guy who was talking about
it's trade
his
speak.
Washing machine? Yeah. It's like, I don't know, it's almost like they get off on it or something.
Yeah.
Or they're hypnotized by it.
That was the insinuation.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, by the end of it, I was drawing connections to like maybe, one of the themes of this movie is about advertising as hypnosis or something like that. You know what I mean? Some sort of like supernatural hypnosis in just the way that we talk to each other or the things that we see on TV or advertisements or,
product. I mean, it's consumerism is
the Cheddar Goblin and Mandy is probably the most hypnotizing commercial I have ever seen. So
I still got to watch that someday.
No, Cheddar Goblin.
So that's perfect.
I'm not a huge fan of Mandy, but I that sequence of what happens in that movie of he goes from that to watching the Cheddar Goblins in the scene that follows that way in the bathroom.
Man.
Yeah, it is quite possibly my favorite 10-15 minutes of cinema and sometimes of just how the range of emotions that Nicolas Cage goes through in that section of time. I mean, it is Um, I mean, wow. I mean, it's pretty great.
But
Um,
advertising as hypnosis, like,
mhm.
yeah, you get the really long L's that stretch throughout, like through the entire screen in the word sale, and you get the word sale
Yeah.
repeated 3 or 4 times in the commercial itself, and then not too long after, like maybe it was like a second or third commercial in the movie,
Mhm.
and they're always about the department store.
Mhm.
You get the scene where the department store ladies are like, "Come in, come in, come in," and they're like reaching with their hands, and it's
Yeah.
opening
They all do
time
it.
early in the morning. Um, and then there's that radio monologue in the car accident scene, where this
Mm.
woman's just talking about, like, at length how she would stay up all night and loved having like an all night coffee, and loved queuing for those department store sales.
Mhm.
So yeah, like all of those elements, and the especially the class elements, are done so well.
Mm.
Um, but advertising as hypnosis does play through a lot of the movie.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I feel like what was Marianne Jean Baptiste's character name? Oh, it's Sheila.
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 Mhm.
I feel like Sheila was looking at that dress as sort of a way out of like all of these mundane horrors that she had to deal with on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yes.
So, maybe the reason that she sort of got trapped in this, horrible hypnosis sort of situation is her vulnerability by just wanting something nice,
Hmm.
Mhm.
Exactly. And
just
there's also a
wanting to
lot
go on a nice date.
that's said about the size. It's size 36, and that the idea about that is also a huge
Yeah.
part of the film. Is
Right.
and then later, especially with the
It's
Sophia wife.
funny that you caught that thing about the queue. I didn't catch that, but now I'm like, oh, there was a bunch of stuff about queues. Like that
Hmm.
lady who was going like, you have to respect the queue. And then it got into a fight.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That was nuts. That was nuts. They were killing each other.
Yeah. It's what ends up causing the whole downfall is people not respecting the queue.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
thing
But
that British people and British culture, they take great pride in knowing how to stand in line
Yeah, they do.
properly.
Hmm.
yeah. But maybe going like combining that idea with some of the ideas that are brought up by those scenes with the HR people and all this stuff is
Hmm.
like these like what's the word, like status quo kind of things,
Yeah.
like this is how
Stay in your
society
lane.
functions. You
Yeah.
have to give a wave
Hmm.
to this person that's very proper, and you have to stand
Hmm.
in this queue and all these kinds of things.
Hmm.
I don't know, I think the
And the
film
one
is
time
trying
they're
to
trying to,
say.
she's trying to break that with that. She thinks this dress is her sort of is something that, yeah.
I
And it
think
ends
the
up being,
film is maybe drawing parallels between all of these things, and like the supernatural, sinister element of it all,
mhm.
where it's like we're all under this sort of mass hypnosis of like all of these different status quo rules that we have to follow. And even with like the washing machine repairman and his family and stuff like that, they seem to be going through all these motions as well, but there was no passion, like during their
Mhm.
sex scene and stuff like that. They're talking about a queue. They're talking about a queue. They were like
Mhm.
this list of people that we need to
Mhm.
invite to our wedding. There you go. The queue theme.
Yeah.
They
Um,
invited them. They invited themselves.
yeah, yeah. And she's like, "Are you listening?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah."
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, the essay, are
those
you
actors,
listening?
everybody in the movie was really, really great performance. I specifically marked Miss Goodluck, Miss Luckgood. What was
Hmm.
it called?
Hmm.
Her name is
Luckmore.
Fatima Mohammed, and I thought her dialogue was the best in the entire movie. Like just
Hmm.
those things that she got to say, the language that she got to play with. She really got to ham it up, but she wasn't.
Hmm.
She wasn't too, she wasn't campy. She wasn't like far in the realm of,
Hmm.
kitsch or whatever.
The
She
man
committed.
was. The man was campy.
Yeah, yeah. The man was campy.
Absolutely.
But also, like, I think the thing that grounded the whole damn thing was Marianne Jean Baptiste. Like,
Yes.
her face was so empathetic
Hmm.
and you began to care about her. You legitimately did, and I didn't want to see any of those bad things happen to her. I thought she was precious. It made it devastating. I just wanted her to have something nice for once in life from her dickhead son. That dude
Well,
was rude.
it was well designed, like in terms of empathizing with a character and then destroying a character, which is
Yeah.
another thing that horror loves to do. Um,
Yeah.
it was set up so extremely well. With Sheila, I'd say 98% of people have been on a bad date, and the other 2% just haven't been on any dates. Yeah, that was the part that made me go, okay, yeah, this person I truly like, and I'm going to miss them whenever they're inevitably killed off.
Yeah.
I was
The
just
fact that
praying
they
that-
both showed up with the coupon that they said we just had to get the same pudding is
Yeah.
Although, hey, that guy was better than the first one.
yes. You think that
he
you're
at
being
least-
set up again because like that was your
Yeah.
first introduction to that, and you're like, oh no, not again, and then it ends up sort of that it subverts
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
at least he was
The
kind.
second discount is even better. Keep coming back.
Mhm.
There was also some stuff with the dynamic between the mother and the son, and the son's lover as well. That I was kind of like, am I getting? I mean, let me put it out to the table. Was anybody else
Mhm.
feeling like Oedipal vibes, like weird sort of sexual dynamics between the three of them? There was something a little strange about
there's
that.
a weird thing about in the
Mostly
movie.
in the shower scene, but go ahead, Cade.
So I mean, yeah. So Gwendolyn Christie is 40, over 40. When this movie's made, and is just dating this teenager, and then like he even has like a book that's later revealed of like she's like how to seduce an older woman. Like there is obviously they are playing with that. At first, I'm like, is she supposed to be younger? I don't. So that was my question. And then when you see that book later, like okay, no, that is, and then makes sense why she's so put off by this relationship. Like she's like this is bizarre, but like she's also like just trying to like support her son. So I don't know, that is a very interesting thing of like it's not okay, but then like but the fact that like she then goes she hears them and she goes and looks through the keyhole, and then obviously they make like this eye contact. There is some weird things going on there that I don't know what the
lingerie with Vince's face pasted right on it.
I forgot about that. The fact, which would have been hard to do in 1993, right?
It would have.
You got to go to the print shop. You got to, you have to go out to do that.
And this movie, like, it's subtly hilarious. Like, it's a horror comedy that tucks in its comedy so well that you're like, you look back on it and you go, damn, that was a really funny movie. But I just did, like, there are so many scenes I didn't laugh at just because they were so well done and artful and great. But
do y'all know if this is a British filmmaker or if it was just set in Britain?
He's a British filmmaker.
I don't know.
Peter Strickland. He's produced a lot of different things with BBC and stuff. Okay. So yeah,
gotcha. There was definitely that British sense of humor, the very like detached and sort of dry delivery of a lot of those lines, especially from the PR people. I thought they were like they were almost like those two Muppets, like Statler and Waldorf, like they had like their bit to do, but it's done in such a way where it's like, oh, this isn't like a joke scene. Like it's like a scene, they're just they're just a little funny people.
Well, it's implied that they're a couple, right? Isn't that implied? Am I crazy with that? Or they have some sort of okay.
So,
and the fact that they had why else would they have a singular, like they talk about a washing machine?
The washing machine that they repaired together.
Yeah.
I didn't even pick up on that.
That's the I feel like that's the implication, which is interesting in a corporate setting to have a pair of people who are in a couple that are. It's weird to have two bosses in that sort of way. Anyways, like that. It's I don't know. That's a.
Yeah, I'm glad that they found each other.
Yeah, they're certainly a match there.
Isn't Don't you just love whenever you like talk down to people about the 2 minutes they didn't clock off in the washroom?
Yeah.
Gosh, that just really gets me going.
And it's not like a good cop, bad cop. They both are the bad cop.
Yeah.
They're like, I think
It's passive aggressive cop is what it is.
Yeah. And the fact that like they're like, okay, no, you didn't pick that to the bone enough. Let me pick up from where you left off. there's some things that we can hit at. Like I like that.
I'm not sure we've demeaned them enough. Let's take one more step forward.
Yeah.
I absolutely cannot stand when like I guess in movies or just any media, I suppose, when there's like a misunderstanding between two characters who have like clear perspectives. And any interaction between the mother and the son in this movie just like made my skin fucking crawl, because I'm like, I see where you're coming from. You're being a bit of a dick, but like you're still valid, you know, but like also you're a teenager, so you're just kind of being rude. That's what you do. That's fine. But the fact that their relationships kept just disintegrating over the course of the runtime just really pained me inside. I was like, I want you guys to understand each other and get along, you know?
Yeah.
Why can't your mom go out on a nice date? Like, what's your problem with that, dude?
Yeah.
You know?
That calls back to what Cade was talking about, how more character development in the first act and just making that the whole movie would probably have been the more
and how he
interesting
deals with
move.
that, then like how he like responds to the fact that what happens, you know, like all that like would have been very fascinating, and like and how like that would have, because it's all very interesting. That's a very interesting relationship, because like there is some underlying thing of how he's like when he talks to Gwendolyn Christie when they're playing that game and like in French, and she's like, hey, don't do that, she'll hate you forever, you know, like like actually kind of sticking up for her in that respect, like. And then obviously the Western Machine where he's trying to help her, like when that's all happening. So like that's when they're the closest. And
it's funny. It shows that he cares about her, but because he's a teenager and he's got a girlfriend and he wants to look cool, he can't let his mom know that he actually cares. So he has to speak French to do that. And honestly, like, yeah, that bit of reining Gwen in a little bit definitely called for, just in terms of like a character who walks out of the bathroom and looks down on this woman and is just like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were here, and I hope that you got something good at that sale. And I don't really.
She was the worst
one
of the bunch, right?
I'm going to make small talk and occupy space in this bathroom while you're just being tortured about how you can't use the restroom. Like that, yeah.
She was almost as nefarious as the dress itself.
I agree.
Like,
I think that to me, she's
very much so.
She's the worst person of the entire thing, and I'm including the killer dress.
She has fantastic eyes, though. Like her stare was, you know, she.
I think
really
it gets Gwendolyn Christie.
that.
Yeah, her performance is great. Yes, as that.
Yeah.
But okay, so good question is how much of it is the dress? Because I think like that was an interesting thing that I'm like I didn't quite like, it's not clear like what is the dress causing and what is its purpose is unclear, and what is the exterior, like perhaps these people in the department store or what. So the dress causes some sort of rash. At one point it tries to
in terms of what you can call it, like an omen is the best way to describe the dress. Like it is just a like a harbinger of doom.
Yes.
I think it's easy to like read it as a metaphor, you know, for consumerism, for fashion, for, you know what I mean, like advertisements, and like just maybe if you want to go deep on it, you know, you could do a whole capitalist reading of the entire film, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, definitely.
I think it's easy to see it as a projection of like the inner desires of each character that wears the dress.
I agree, but like whenever you call this a killer dress movie, the dress doesn't kill anybody.
Yeah, it doesn't have like a knife and goes.
Well, I just mean it doesn't actually kill anybody. Like all the kills are from other things.
Oh, Well, did it choke anybody out? Didn't it smother?
It tried to smother Gwendolyn Christie, but it was like a dream,
Yeah.
right? She survived,
Right.
Yeah.
She pulled it off. It killed the bird. It suffocated the bird.
Yeah.
Well-
it seems like the dress could be lurking in the background, like knowing everybody's worst fears or like
Uh-huh.
darkest secrets, influencing their dreams. Like the
Dress
dream
was,
about the dress and the mother and everything like that. Like
yeah.
it kind of lays everybody's inner worlds bare, but it does so secretly to itself. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what makes the dress interesting in the movie.
That's why I see it as sort of a symbol or a metaphor, because the dress had some like active agency in the plot, but
Mhm.
mostly it was like you said, it was a harbinger, or it was sort of
Mm.
a malevolent presence in everyone's life that just
Mhm.
guided them down a dark path. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I would agree with that. I mean, I think that's the intentional point of the film, but I do think there's a weird reading of the film that the dress is almost the positive person. That because
Oh.
that the bad person is this lady in the department store that's like it has her paws onto these people, but this dress is trying to keep safe the protagonist, being that it tries to smother Gwendolyn Christie. It when she's in the car accident, he is trying to get out, and she dies elsewhere because of that. The dress sets fire to the department store in order to destroy everything.
The dress is the youthful optimism of capitalism itself. Even when the dog wants to tear it up, it's just like, I'm resilient. I'm still here, okay? I'm gonna dust myself off, and I'm going to be a perfect dress again. You can burn down this department store, but you can't burn down me and my spirit.
Yeah, the dress lives on
Dress
Exactly.
lives
at the
on.
end of the movie.
Evil can never die, or whatever they
Yeah,
say.
maybe it's sort of like the dream of consumerism, like made into fabric. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
if I can possess this thing, it will solve all of my problems, and I'll feel whole. You know,
Mhm.
or something
Yeah.
like that. But it just remains out of reach. You know, it slips through people's fingers, and it kind of brushes across different scenes.
So, one last things I want to mention is like mannequins in general. They're scary, and I think that's great to have a bunch of mannequins throughout it. I mean, is the implication that the bad lady is a mannequin come to life, or she has an army of mannequins? What's the the implication there? Because there's something going on with these mannequins, and how much she loves them and everything, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, when dealing with fashion, it's obviously it's making me think of Blood and Black Lace, which is like maybe my favorite Giallo movie, and
Okay.
that has a ton of mannequins in it as well. And maybe there's some mannequins in Suspiria as well. I'm sure there are. Um, it may be as surface level as like what you said, Cade. Like they're just fucking creepy. Like they're just humanoid figures that just stand there. But
Mhm.
also, you know, in like a context like this particular movie, you know, you could maybe work it into that capitalist consumerist sort of metaphor that they're playing with, like, you know, a humanoid figure that's devoid of life. You know, a lot of these people are kind of working class, down on their luck type. I just want to go on a nice date. I just want to, I got to just connect with my wife, or, you know, very like simple everyday problems. But these people
Mhm.
are a little dead behind the eyes sometimes, you know. Maybe I'm drawing that conclusion, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think that there's something there with the men. I mean, that's the visual motif that
You
goes
feel
throughout.
that level of desperation and like death behind the eyes, especially at the nightclub where people like, yeah, no matter if it's the stag party or if it's like the Tinder date, like it's still the same kind of atmosphere at the same place.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It's like trying to save a party after everyone's tired, and there's somebody just going like, "Let's keep going, man. Let's keep going," you know, but everybody's just done already. That stag party scene was uh one of the most interesting parts of the movie, I think, because immediately you just sort of see who that character, the washing machine repairman, I think his name is Reggie.
Mhm.
You just immediately like see not only who he is on the surface, but maybe like a lot of what's going on underneath the surface too, where they make him wear the dress. I thought that was like a really great way to like introduce you to that character and like maybe what's going on internally inside of him.
Mhm.
Although switching to that protagonist halfway,
Mhm.
it was so hard to get reoriented and to care about that family after caring about this other family,
Yeah.
that by the time it got to like act 3 and everything was sort of climaxing, I was like, I don't know if you've like earned this runtime, because you
Mhm.
kind of like you lost me in 2/3 of the way through.
Mhm.
I distinctly remember feeling like this is kind of like running out of steam because you're the one who switched it. You're the one who
Mm.
cut it off, Peter Strickland.
What's interesting, so I was reading sort of what inspired this thing, and what inspired it was the idea of a secondhand store. So like that was the
Mhm.
initial idea. I think is like you could sort of see like, okay, secondhand store, these are dead people's clothing. Like that's even brought up earlier of like, that they're like they mentioned offhand that secondhand stores are dead people's clothing, and 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 so the idea that like we're going to explore where this dress, like if it where it came from, if it's someone's, and then perhaps like the dress killed them, the person, whatever. And so you can see how that is an idea there, but you end up creating a much better story as the pretense for what you're trying to do. So yeah,
The dead model wore this actual dress, but don't worry, she showered very, very strenuously first.
That was a great line. She thoroughly
Mhm.
showered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think maybe that problem would have been solved with like a more like rigid structure to the movie.
Mm.
Maybe if there had been like an act 1, act 2, act 3, and each act had a different like owner of the dress or something like that.
Mhm.
It's just if the idea of your movie is to show like multiple people owning this thing and it being like passed down, I gotta have more people own the
Mhm.
dress. You know,
Yeah.
you spend half the movie with one and then you switch halfway through. No, give me a cast of characters.
Yeah. I agree.
That
Would
kind
have
of
been
thing.
better as a series of short stories than a 2-act play.
Yeah. Honestly, I thought it was going to be an anthology going in, like sort of,
Mm.
this story is unrelated,. But then the dress is the through line. I feel
Mhm.
like maybe that would have worked a little bit
Yes,
more.
I 100% agree with that.
I feel like, yeah, in terms of enjoying a movie and the pacing of a movie, yes. I still love the way the different areas, like the disco, like stitched the two characters together really well. But
Mhm.
yeah, nonetheless, it took too long to get there.
I will
Mm.
say about the cinematography, although they really nailed that red color, they really nailed like a lot of the production design and art department on this movie.
Mhm.
I will say they shot it on an Alexa Mini. I just looked that up because I
Mhm.
wanted to know. I really think it would have benefited not having been shot on digital. I really think they would have benefited from that. It would have given it a texture and a grain that would have recalled like those movies that they're pastiching,
Mhm.
but also it would have given a little bit more life to the movie after all of these characters in the movie are kind of a little bit dead.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And also, I think the color, you really have to push a little bit more to get digital cameras to like do that kind of color. I mean, you're really going for like Technicolor. And if
Mhm.
you use a digital camera to get to Technicolor, it's a little bit harder than if you were to start on film. It's like, the starting place is different. So
That's true.
some of the scenes where, let's say, remember the dog scene where they were walking through the countryside?
Yep.
I
Mhm.
remember as soon as that it cut to that scene, I remember going, "Ooh, all the color has just been like sucked out of this movie now."
Yeah,
And it
it's
looks
extremely
like
desaturated.
yeah, and it looks like they turned on the digital camera and they just like sort of
Mhm.
let it go. And I thought, okay, like maybe this contrast is to show like her normal life versus this supernatural element in her
Mhm.
life, very colorful. But
It's
I
not a.
also
I think it's probably because it's not in a closed environment that they can control a lot. They're out in the wild,
yeah.
to do.
I
I think
just
that's.
that's what I mean about like the detached or like the ironic detachment a little bit from pastiching a genre like
Mhm.
this is like if you're not gonna commit fucking hard to being a giallo movie and going there for it. It's a little bit like, I don't know, like, don't tease me. Like, I would rather just go watch a giallo movie now that really goes for it, you know? Give me that color, give me that blood splattered at, you know? I feel like they could have pushed it a little bit further with that. Give me the goods.
I think it was like, that's what I'm saying. I do think like there's sections of this film that's like, here's this, and it's all mixed together. And it is like, here's a sort of a British almost character drama about, you know, a family and all in their workings of relationships and stuff. And then that's a big part of it. And then there is the giallo scenes and horror. And then you have these almost like workplace comedy kind of things, like so like those are the three things that this movie's like putting in a blender and just like shooting out at random points.
You got Bert and Ernie in some of those things.
Yeah, so that's where it's like, it's interesting.
Oh, and before we get off this movie, I just want to mention points to the movie for having a baby that flips the guy off in that one
in
scene.
a little dress, right?
Yeah, I loved that. I was like, are they gonna do it? Are they gonna? Oh, nice. They got.
And the baby was wearing the dress. And yeah. And it didn't like me either, or whatever the line was.
And then he's like,
flips. Yeah.
I appreciated when it would go into the more surreal and, you know, impressionistic type of stuff. It's like they combine the two genres really well, like the kitchen sink melodrama and the, you know, giallo thing. It's just that I am more entertained by one of those genres than the other, you know? They blended it well, though. They blended it well.
To me, I like a good family drama. I think that to me was like, I'm like, give me more of that. I want to know the repercussions of why these people are in reasonings, and I want like. And perhaps because they're mixing all these things, none of them are fully realized. I think that's perhaps the sort of takeaway there, is that like each one of those sections, you don't get the full breadth of what that could be because it's diluted by the using of other ones. If I was to say take out anything, it's take out the sort of comedic stuff of that. And even though they were good on their own, they did stick out as like, that's odd. Like I don't, and not like we could have given more room to the other stuff.
You're telling me you could do without Vince's face on that lingerie? Man, that's a hard part of the movie to give up.
Yeah, that's an important prop. You know, they spent a lot of time making that. The production had to source that.
Yeah. You think they had to go out and find that already existing? I like that.
Yeah,
idea.
the secondhand shop. That's where
and then they hired they went on a search of who's on this underwear, and we're gonna get the.
You wouldn't believe what I found at the secondhand store.
Yeah.
Okay.
They cast him because his face was on the knickers.
Yeah, I think that's my theory. I like that theory. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to say, would we recommend this and what would we rate it? Harrison, would you recommend this movie and what would you rate
it? Yes, I would recommend this movie. Anyone who likes movies that play with language extremely well, movies with great sound design, movies with beautiful atmospheric parts, and just, go for it. What would I give this movie? I would give this movie 3 red dresses.
Okay. 3 red dresses. I'm going to give you the lady who's dancing in the red dress.
Oh, spicing up the emoji game here, Gabe.
Well, that's the only red.
Oh, nice.
Red dress.
When are we going to do this with the emoji movie?
Yeah, the emoji movie.
Oh yeah. But what would you pair that with? My God. You know. What could compare?
Yeah. Luca, would you recommend this movie and what would you rate it?
I would recommend this movie to people who are maybe looking for a way into watching giallo movies, but like are not ready to dive into like the Italianness of it all. Like maybe start with the British giallo. Like it's a little bit more reserved and a little bit more of like an entryway into this genre. I did really, really like the movie, especially the main performance. Come for the main performance because she is a great actress who like I really want to see her like in more stuff. I got to look up her career. But I will say all of that, like positive cinematography, great sound design, like all of that, it kind of comes together in a package that's a little bit less than the sum of its parts. Doesn't quite like stick it, and I think the reason for that is the switch halfway through. I think it kind of cuts off the steam that you've been building.
Mhm.
So I definitely would recommend it, but as a gateway into like deeper movies within the genre.
Cool. And do you have a rating for it?
I would rate it. How many dresses out of like 3 out of what did you do? Because I'll
It
compare
doesn't
mine
need
to
to be
yours.
dresses.
It could be anything.
It's the scores are made up and don't
If you have-
matter. That's what we're
Yeah.
going with. You can name
You could
any
do out of
emoji you want,
stars,
as
you can
many
do it-
of them as you want.
Or you don't have to do emojis. You,
Okay.
however you rate things. We have no rules here.
It's highly arbitrary.
It's hard to whatever feels right to you.
I'll give you a challenge, Cade. I'll say out of 10,000 red dresses, I'll give it 3,000.
Okay. Out of 10, so you're giving it 3 out of 10? Is that what you're giving it?
Yeah, that was a runaround way of saying it.
Okay, so that's not too high.
Yeah,
You praised it
I'm a
quite a
little
bit.
yeah. I'm a little mid on it.
Yeah, we'll give you both 3 red
I-
dresses.
Yeah, I think it's maybe lowered by the fact that like I'm not ready to like watch it again. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like I don't have a desire to return to it. Perhaps I think that influences my rating a little bit.
Yeah, I really thought, it was high praise. 3 out of 10, that's pretty
Yeah.
low. Yeah, no,
A good entryway.
I would recommend you to watch this. I wouldn't say don't watch it. It's a good watch. It is long. It's 2 hours, so it's if you're going into it, just know that. And it does kind of when the shift happens, it does lose a little bit of steam, but then the final act, really, I did like that a lot, and the visual nature of that was really interesting. I agree. The main performance is what sticks out, and the cinematography is really beautiful. It probably should have been on film. I understand that they probably didn't have the budget to do that, so they did what they did, and I thought they used what they had for a budget really well for the visual nature of the film. Ultimately, I give it where the film ends. I give it a fire. It's a fire emoji. It's fire.
Thematically relevant.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's not one of my favorite horrors, but it gives me a little bit of family drama, and love that. And it should have given me more, but yeah. That's that. That's In Fabric. We've talked about that. Now we get it's gonna be a long episode, everyone, because now we're just now to the main course here. Everyone, get ready. This is a movie that the New York Times called one of the weirdest movies ever. That was their headline. So we're going to talk about 2016's The Greasy Strangler. We're going to do our musical intro, our intermission. Be sure to grab something from the concession stand, and we'll be back. Harrison will give us the plot. Thank you, Harrison, for doing that, for giving us the plot of The Greasy Strangler.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's intermission time. All these delicious treats are waiting for you at the refreshment stand. Delicious fresh popcorn, ice-cold cola, and candy you know and love. They're all ready for you now, so you won't have to miss any of the feature. Come and get them.
And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm going to throw it to Harrison right now to give the plot of the movie. Wait just a second here. Greasy Strangler. Oh boy, I have messed this up thoroughly. There you go.
Nice.
Greasy Strangler. Big Ronnie and Big Braden are two of the coolest disco tour guides you will ever meet in your life. And they're so cool. They'd never say they were cool in person, much like Ronnie never says, he says, I'm always not the Greasy Strangler. But basically, they just go on like father-son hijinks, where they compete with each other over a woman, and anytime Ronnie doesn't get his way, he strangles somebody. And sometimes he likes to run through a car wash, to get the grease off. Because, man, he loves grease. They live in this terrible, rundown, dilapidated place. And that's about it. That's the Greasy Strangler. Uh, Probably one of the most hilarious movies I've seen, plus one of the movies that like made me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit more than I've ever seen. So it takes those like two dissonant feelings. God, the Greasy Strangler.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could all agree it's one of the most disgusting things we've ever watched at various points. It is, wow. Some of the things.
Straight up, like the first note that I wrote when I started watching it was most unpleasant movie ever, question mark.
Uh, intentionally so. It was the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of grease in this movie. If you just prepare for that, there's a lot of oil-based things in Grease, and
there's a lot of on-screen chanting of "Hootie Tootie Disco Cutie."
Okay.
No, Rudy Tootie Disco Cutie.
Okay, so I have to open this up. So the opening scene of this movie, I don't think I've laughed harder at an opening scene of a movie ever, of where he like he says something, he's like, oh, this doesn't have enough grease, and he's like, what? You probably think I'm the Greasy Strangler, and
Never said that.
I never said.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Yes, just the cadence of that, it was made, and then it sort of goes in different ways or whatever. But that I found that to be incredibly hilarious. So okay, I guess we'll start off with what everyone thought about the movie. Luca, what did you think about this movie in general? What was your thoughts?
It's
you
really
like it?
sad because like I love gross out stuff. Like I am a fan of those kinds of movies. I enjoy that kind of thing. And also like in real life, I like making, my loved ones uncomfortable by talking about gross stuff. And so like I have no problem with these kinds of things. I also really, really like weird ass movies that don't take place in reality and don't really star like human characters and stuff like that. So all of these things combined into one movie, like I should have fucking like loved this, and it should have been like right up my alley. I was like aggressively upset by this movie. In like not the way that they intended. I think like it was made in an intentionally abrasive way, right? And it was made to be purposefully like as sort of ugly as possible, and like a lot of the characters lack like redeeming qualities, and so like ugliness is definitely a theme that like I wrote down as like this movie might be about ugliness itself, but at the same time when trying to like find something of value in here, like I was really struggling. Like I wrote down, what did I like, question mark, because I don't quite know what I liked. There were certain editing rhythms that I thought were really funny. Every single time Ronnie went to the car wash and got cleaned, I thought was fucking hilarious. Him getting beaten by like the washer thing, it was, and he's like,
it gets better and better each time. It really
yeah, and
was
he's standing
one
there
of the
going
best
like,
features in the movie.
yeah. I thought that was hilarious. I think, individual lines and like certain scenes and stuff, I really did find funny. Like legit, I will give it that. But I was like not charmed by the movie, and I think the way that they want you to be charmed, which is like, this is so unpleasant that it's charming, you know?
Mm.
Like everybody clearly, like part of, I feel like the enjoyment of the movie is like questioning to yourself, like, these people are so committed to doing these crazy things. Like, this must have been a fun movie to work on, you know? Imagine being on the fucking set for this movie, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like that's part of the enjoyment of the movie, but I was like, I didn't think it was cute. I didn't think it was, you know, twee or quirky or, you know, whatever sort of like other word could be like used to describe it. I just wasn't charmed by it. I think, and also I must say at the end of my review, I had a really long day yesterday. It was just not like, it was probably the last fucking thing I wanted to see. Which I'm sure the filmmaker, the director of this movie, probably, if he were to hear that, would go, yeah, that's exactly how I want you to watch it, you know? At the end of like a long day and you don't care and like, you know, you hated it
I
so
hope you
much.
didn't
That's
get a
great.
good night's sleep the night before, too.
Yeah, exactly. I hope you had just eaten a big meal before you watched it. You know, all
Yeah,
that
gave
kind
you
of shit.
indigestion. Hope it was real
You know, and
greasy.
I thought of a ton of movies while watching it. Like I thought of Freddy Got Fingered and stuff like that. That's intentionally made to be very abrasive. And I thought, why the fuck do I love Freddy Got Fingered and I hate this movie? Like, you know, they're sort of in the same genre, but just one just has a charm and one I just wasn't charmed by. You know,
Right.
Harrison, we'll go to you then. Did you like the movie?
Wow. I like what Luca just said because it just occurred to me the movie is part like Bad Grandpa and part like Tim and Eric.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to combine those styles of comedy, and they like don't really mix well at all. So yeah. The thing that stood out the most to me about this movie, it felt like masters of improv comedy were at work like throughout the film. It felt like the actors were like intentionally looking for the most inappropriate possible thing to say in that moment for that character. And that was their aim for so much of this movie. And they pulled it off. They pulled it off so incredibly well. Like, the kind of the first date where they're getting serious between Janet and Braden, and there's this line where he just goes, "Have you seen my dad?" Whenever like she had just taken off her shirt or whatever, and it's just those parts that you go, this is hilarious, but I am so like shocked at the like. At just how grossed out this gross out film was.
So did you like it, or did you?
It's still hard to enjoy that.
Did you like it or not, Harrison? I need you on the record.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I was too uncomfortable to like or dislike it. I guess is the best way of putting it.
This is a movie that makes you question the definition of the word like. Like what does it mean to like something?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
So I'll say I'm not a fan of the gross out genre. I don't like the Farley brothers. I think they're some of the worst filmmakers ever. I do not care for that sort of style of humor. I found this movie to be incredibly funny. I thought it was in the performances were bold and explosive and interesting and bizarre, and some of the most bizarre performances I've ever seen, and I couldn't keep my eyes off of the choices. Every single down to supporting characters, the choices that they were making were so interesting and fascinating, and not like, you know, they're obviously not trying to be realistic. Like, it's not the point of the film. They're doing this different style of performance, almost these exaggerated, over the top performances, and they are endlessly fascinating.
The free drinks scene.
Which scene? What are you referring to?
The early on in the tour where they're just like repeating free drinks, free drinks, free drinks,
free drinks. Yes.
Try drinking.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
The answers in German too.
Yes, I think that there's so many interesting things, and that's why I don't think at all is it is it improv? Is this highly scripted? This is a highly precise scripted thing because things come back. Things are they are coming at it from like a improv sensibility of like the performance level of like everything's sort of fresh and new, and like it seems like there's no way they could have choreographed the response like the way that they said it. But in the choice, like they had to have done different and like cobbled it together. Like it was so in that sense, like each thing seems fresh and new, but the script had to be like airtight for this film to make sense in how they were doing like it, and that's also incredibly fascinating. I
think they did like a Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm where they like improv the hell out of it and then take the best scenes from there?
I don't. I think there's no way of how that the way that things are layered and the way that there are callbacks and the way that the language is so precise that
I'll give you that with certain scenes for sure.
It sounded like everybody was reading throughout the movie for me. So I figured they must have been like, if not cue cards, they must have been instructed to sort of read the script in a very like literal way. No. Yes. Don't put any emotion on it. Just read the line, like literally read it out loud, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I there is that style to it. I mean, I think of the scene where what's Oinker? Is that his name?
Yeah, goddamn Oinker.
He shows up and he's like the horror house and the whorehouse and the fact that he's like, I'm gonna go out and then just there's just so many. I
liked Oinker.
There's too many great. I loved Oinker. I loved the hot dog vendor. He goes out on a date and there's the hot dog vendor in the middle of the night. Yeah. Like there's just so many like that's so.
I'm dunking this dog.
Yeah.
This dog is dunked.
Like it was like a pretty like nice looking initially chili cheese dog. Like that actually looks like an actual decent looking food in the entire movie. And like because it's just the food in this is so disgusting. It's just disgusting. Yeah. And then he like presents him with this actually beautiful looking chili cheese dog, which is impossible. Yeah. Like, it would not typically be something that looks that beautiful. And he's like, I'm dunking it.
That's the one incontinuity in the entire movie. He dunks his dog. It's totally covered in grease, and then like one or two scenes later, he's just eating a normal chili cheese dog again.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Unwatchable.
I know. It's.
I liked it. At the end of the day, I liked it. There were things that were I think where it shifts, where like I love the first half of this movie a lot. I think when I think where it loses it is when it becomes the love triangle. I'm like, ow, like you were that could have been like, I really like the premise of the film that you're doing, and you could have gone. I think when you're writing a comedy like this, you can go in multiple sort of directions, and when they settle into what this movie is, and it's like a love triangle, I'm like, that's disappointing. That like this movie could have like, I was really hoping for, which it does sort of eventually fall into, but like where they're trying to find the Greasy Strangler, and like I think that's a lot more interesting, or like the idea like you could have done a lot with. The world's looking for like news reports of this Greasy Strangler, like other people talking about the Greasy Strangler. There's not a lot of talk around town about the Greasy Strangler. It's just something I guess people are aware of. But you also get the feeling that perhaps he's trying to make the Greasy Strangler a thing. Like he's out there like trying to be like, everyone needs to be worried about the Greasy Strangler, which is also
He's the one who's talking about it the most.
Yeah, no one else says anything about the Greasy Strangler.
I just want everyone to know that I'm
not. And he's the investigator.
Yes. Yeah, he's the investigator who comes around. But
there will be no more inquiries.
Yes. To me, that performance is extraordinary. I think I don't know. I know that you guys might like it, but I think that central performance is captivating. It is captivating in a way that I truly find just to be extraordinary. Like every line, I found myself just being like, that is fascinating. Like that, the choice to sort of say the line in that way is fascinating. I find myself like going back to being like, and watching that line again, because I'm like, that's a choice. That's a swing for the fence. That's it's fascinating. It's like I want to see him in more weird things. Like that is interesting. So
Yeah, also, people who watch this movie, look up the real life story of the guy who plays Ronnie, because he's a very interesting fella in real life as well. He's a super famous hairdresser for many stars.
oh really?
Yes. Yeah, he's got a long history.
Huh. Well, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
I love. I see. To me, I'm someone who loves logistics. I would have loved more exploration of the fact that he does this disco walking tour, like the logistics of that. Does he have does he put it out in the newspaper? How do people find out about this disco walking tour? Like
It's a
that
shit walking tour too.
yes, the little bits that we get is hilarious. Now upstairs, that's the part where all three, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Like the fact that he knows nothing about them. He knows nothing about outside of like the names of these bands and like songs that they do. Just so many.
The Bee
This is
Gees
where
stood in
Cool
this
from, yeah. This is where Cool from Cool and the Gang. Like none of these are like the names of the people that's actually in it, or the fact that he thinks Earth, Wind, and Fire were three people that were called Earth, Wind, and Fire. All that's yeah.
Come to think of it, where's the disco paraphernalia in the house? Like you would expect him to be a fan of some kind, a super fan, of course. And really all it is just the weird purple outfit with the mesh see-through like chest and crotch. Like that's the only part of disco that he's really taken away from.
I
Yeah.
thought that was his real. I thought that was his real dick for like half of the movie,
Luca.
and then I was like, no fucking way, no fucking way.
Yeah, no, it didn't maintain the physics of a real penis. Yeah, so just gonna.
So it came to a point.
It came to a point. It was big on the base, and then it came to a point. Yeah.
Yeah, and they showed it off so much, so I'm sure they spent like money making that prosthetic. Like they really got their use of it.
Yeah, they did.
That's something I will give the movie, is that it really enjoys like just hanging on people's bodies and like looking at naked people. Like half of this movie, the people in the movie are just naked in a scene, and it's not really like a part of the plot of it. But I guess I found, okay, this maybe unlocks like a wider thing that I wanted to talk about with this movie. Okay. Which is, during it I was like there's like a subgenre of movie that's like kind of all this thing where it's like, I'm going to make the most unpleasant, shocking type of movie possible, and like a big figure in that genre is John Waters. So I was trying to sort of compare this to like,
oh yeah,
who are they like following in the footsteps of here? They're following the footsteps of John Waters. But Absolutely. When you compare something like this to the movies of John Waters, I feel like what's lacking in The Greasy Strangler for me, that I love getting in John Waters movies, is beauty in ugliness. John Waters looks at things that are traditionally seen as disgusting or ugly, and he finds beauty in them, and he thinks that he legitimately carries the attitude of, I think that this thing is beautiful. You may think it's ugly, but I love looking at these people. I love looking at these dilapidated houses or the environment. You know what I mean? In this movie, I felt like the camera had no joy to it. The camera had no love for, the things that it was showing. It just wanted to show you something ugly. I didn't find that like beauty in the filmmaking of it and behind the camera. So, although I think it's a plus for the movie that it has so much nudity, because I think like nudity of all kinds in movies is great, especially these types of bodies. Like we don't normally see these kinds of people in movies, obviously. I did find that like behind the camera, there was like almost a lack of curiosity or empathy or love for what the camera was photographing. I wanted to find the beauty in the ugliness, and all I got back was like kind of ugliness,
I agree with you on so much of the John Waters stuff that you're saying. I'd say 2 points. Like one area where the filmmaker and John Waters like really kind of intersect well is their extremely screwed up takes on food, like eggs, with John Waters. And then the other thing where they really diverge, like I think the care part you were spot on. kind of the love of amateur acting is
Yeah.
always it's always there in John Waters movies. Like you know, these people are not professionals and they're along for the ride and they're having fun. Um, and you're like you're doing your best, but I didn't get that at all in the Greasy Strangler. It felt like pros doing good comedy, but yeah.
Like it's a great exercise, like they executed that well, and if the intention was let's go in and make it sound like nobody is in the same room as each other, or like
Mm.
it's almost as if every single actor in the movie recorded their parts on their own and then they put it together in the edit to make it look like people were in scenes together. That's how
I
it
can see that.
feels, at least.
I
As an
feel like
exercise.
he is the big Ronnie. He is very much like he's abrasive. He's this bold figure, and he's like, you know, and all that. And I do feel like everyone is reacting to him in a way. Like I do think like he's making choice. He's like the big bold person in the room, and he's always going to be
Yeah.
the star of whatever room he's in. And he's not. He's going to take everything personally and everything, but and doesn't really care about the other person. So it makes sense for him to be out there and doing all those things. And I do feel like it feels like the other people were like reacting off of that themselves.
Yeah, there was definitely like a central figure in Ronnie, and like he's
Mhm.
kind of like the star power of it all. And also like yeah, within scenes like characters are reacting to each other, and you know, there's like an emotional flow to it. Obviously, it's got a narrative to it. But
Mhm.
I'm saying I think what it has to do with is like the pacing of it, which brings us back to pacing, which we wanted to talk about. Um, I think the pacing of the editing aids in this feeling of like, was nobody in the same room when they were recording and then they put it together or something like that? I think there's space left in between lines that normally you would cut out to keep the flow of conversation, you know, going and to make it sound natural. They
Mhm.
purposefully left in a lot of those gaps between lines, which
They did.
immediately for the human brain just
Mhm.
completely switches something, you know?
Mhm.
Hmm.
You're completely in a different world, you know? It doesn't sound like what people actually sound like. Also,
I do think that was intentional. Yes, I mean that
yes,
was yes,
yes,
and it was meant to
absolutely,
sort of make it unnatural. Yes, there were. You're right.
absolutely.
Before and after things like it the film has this sort of herky jerky kind of you
Yeah.
know pulling like you're on like this unnatural roller coaster of a thing that's going you
And
from
it
one
Yeah.
thing to another,
and
and
it
it's
and it
yeah.
executes that idea well. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
legitimately does that. It puts you in that mood,
Mm-hmm.
but I think what you sacrifice, like, when you do something like that is maybe a little bit of, like, humanity and, like, heart to, like, some of the characters. It's almost as if I'm watching caricatures instead of, like, real people, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and I okay, so I feel like that's, an example of something that maybe is a larger issue of mine with the movie, which is that the pacing of the editing, not only, like, scene to scene and, like, structurally, but I'm talking, like, shot to shot rhythms and stuff like that, is so fucking lethargic throughout a lot of the movie. It just moves at this like snail's pace and it lingers on these shots for a long, long time. I think sort of to put you in this like herky jerky, like uncomfortable sort of mood where you're like, I'm squirming now in my seat because I want you to cut. Why don't you cut? You know, like that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So obviously, I have to approach this whole movie as if everything was intentional because they
Mm-hmm.
they pull a lot of, you know, interesting techniques. But
Mhm.
the effect of those techniques and like what actually happens like psychologically when you make a choice like that is that I'm not enthusiastic to watch your movie because it doesn't feel like you are enthusiastic to present this movie to me. It feels like you are like it, it feels like the movie is like unexcited to be itself, and it's just kind of like going through the motions of like, here's a scene, now here's a scene, now here's a scene, and it's not presented with any sort of like passion. You know, I was waiting for I don't know, the movie to
Mm-hmm.
feel alive, but the movie sort of felt dead to me. And the scenes
Mhm.
where it did feel alive were when it would really go for something like the scene where the Greasy Strangler gets Oinker and like sticks his, you know, finger in there and, you know, sucks out the goop
Mhm.
or whatever. And also like the some of the kill scenes where he's like strangling somebody and their eyes pop out. and stuff like that.
Yep.
I go, oh, cool. Like the movie is excited to do this. Like they put in some effort into these scenes, and like the movie's hype about this. But then it would just go back to these scenes where I'm like, the movie doesn't seem to give a shit about what's going on right now. It's just kind of like shot, cut at this pace that's like, I don't know. It felt like trudging uphill sometimes watching this movie. I'm like, help me, get me on board. You know?
I would guess I did a different take on that. Yeah, I thought it was it was very. I thought they were very passionate about what they were doing, and like everyone, like I mean, they threw themselves into this movie. Every single person from every angle, I felt like everyone was giving 110% to the film. Because I mean, you have to with this premise. I mean, there's no half measures here. Like it is all 100. Like you're giving your body and your soul, and you're putting down your comfort zones of like, what am I gonna like? What goop are they gonna put on me, and what what am I gonna have to watch another person put inside of them? There's just a lot of
gigantically long fingernails are going to scoop up goop and put it on their face. There are so many good just like sight gags in this movie, but I will say that I kind of get where you're coming from, Luca, and I still kind of get where you're coming from, Cade. I feel like the director put in 110% and the actors put in 120%. I feel like the actors carried it a little bit more than the editor and director did.
I would agree with that.
And with that said, I want to ask, like, who do you feel gave the strongest performance or was like did the best acting in this movie?
I think we have to
a pretty clear idea.
I think we have to judge it based on like the intentions of the film as well. So not based on like other films, you know what I mean? Like comparing actors in that way. I just want to say that.
Sure.
So what's your question, Harrison? Which actor, what?
Who gave in just like the best performance?
I feel like it's hard to not say Ronnie because he's such a star and he's so central to the movie. I honestly want to say like MVP, Janet. I really, really liked her. I think she gave the movie some humanity, thank God. Maybe a little semblance of heart, like I was begging for it. But I liked that she came into this like weird world that they've kind of created for each other, and she was like, on board.
Disco Beauty or whatever.
Even weirder.
Yeah.
Disco
Cutie.
Yeah, exactly. I was really charmed by her.
Yeah.
Hands down, it was Elizabeth Durazo for me. I feel like she did something that exceeded anybody else's performance in the movie. I don't know what it was, but it was just it was riveting. It was hilarious. I was beyond impressed.
I think they're all
Braden.
great. Yeah, Braden was also very interesting of a performance. Like it's a very interior performance that he's doing, and that's fascinating. And like that's what was interesting about your 3 stars is they all sort of hit it a different level, or they're kind of playing it differently, and so that's what makes it interesting, and that's also what makes it odd, like an odd experience where people are almost taking 3 different styles of acting and in the same movie. Like it feels wrong. And that is I think intentional.
Feels wrong in general.
So yeah, this movie I think that's the sort of point. And I like that putting 3 different actors that go about it in different ways. I think that I love films that do that. Like there's so many films that seem like everybody's like given the same direction or given the same, or they're playing it the same way, and like they all have like similar inflections, and I don't know if it's like a director that you don't ever know what it is, but they're all coming at it from the same sort of style of acting, and it's interesting. There's some of my favorite films are films of where everyone's playing it differently. You look at like TV show Succession, they're all from different director. I mean, acting, the way that the methods of which they come to acting is different, and it makes this beautiful sort of tapestry of things. I'm thinking of like of a TV show, that American Crime Story, that OJ won, how they're all in different films, it's in different works, and that they're all playing it completely different, which makes it also very interesting of a watch. Shining. Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson. They're different styles of acting. She's playing it interiorly, realistically, and he's doing this almost kabuki, as Steven Spielberg said. It's almost a kabuki style of acting that he's doing in that. And I think anytime that's the case, it has to be very specific. You have to not be going for realism, and it works in that way. And I think this film works, being that the three central people are doing three different styles.
I really, really wish all the elements of this film had like come together in a way that like sung for me. But it was almost as if like I took everything that I kind of liked about outsider type of movies and put them together in one thing. And then I kind of went like, oh, it turns out when you combine all those things, like it's not as cool as I thought it was going to be, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It didn't live up to all my expectation. I do, and I think that it does. It's disappointing what it does settle into, in my opinion. Like I said before, it was. I do wish they would have went a different direction of when the film finally reveals itself. Of like it kind of wished it would have been a little bit more subversive, or a little bit more like that, or just went a completely different direction as to what the actual story was. But it being a love triangle, I was just like, I'm not entirely. I don't care about that being the case. I kind of want to explore the world a little bit more, or explore the Greasy Strangler of it all. Kind of be a crime thing about it or whatever. But still.
What are the origins of the Greasy Strangler?
Yeah. Or just something about, I mean, just there were so many different things I could think you could have explored that a little bit more. I thought, I mean, just speaking of scenes, I have two different scenes that stick out to me. The eyeball scene is I thought was a work of art. I thought that was it, like where he pops them out and then he cooks them up and then he has like a meal inside of this RV with a candlelit meal, like all that while she's in this greasy thing, like that, like stuff like that. I do think it was very intentional and very like interesting, and like I don't know, I found that to be one of the standout scenes in the movie. And then, you know, obviously this one's not as horror. I mean, we call it offbeat horror. It's not. One's more offbeat and one's more horror, and this is definitely the more offbeat of the two that we watched today. But that grapefruit scene is one of the most horrifying things I've seen in my life.
Whoever did the special effects of the actual grease, like I don't know if it was natural grease or if they movied it up, you know. Yeah. But that grease was fucking greasy looking. Like, oh, that was good. That was good.
It looked like somebody mixed cream of wheat, Velveeta cheese, and olive oil together.
Yeah. Yeah,
it was horrifying. I've never had that experience in cinema where I'm looking at like that much of like I can't. I can see most things on screen, but I was like covering I'm like I can't do that. That's more horrifying than any bloody thing I've ever seen of just the fingers and. And actually, like, please, whatever you do, just sort of hint at the fact that you're eating it. No, he goes for it, and I'm like, I can't. Yeah, I can't.
Even like the parts that are pauses between gross out moments are just like disquieting, like really uneasy moments. For example, the creamy cocktails. I bet a whole lot of cows had their teats milked to have these creamy cocktails. Just going on and on about that. It reminds me almost of Old Greg and Bailey's. Like just that kind of queasy feeling of creamy alcohol.
They love to say words like that, like creamy and moist and, you know, dripping and throbbing and just like words that make people uncomfortable, you know.
It's disco, baby.
Yeah. I wanted to ask the both of you, do you feel like this movie is a celebration of all of these uncomfortable, ugly things? Like the movie loves all of these things? Or do you feel like the movie has contempt for its characters and its setting and you know what I mean? Like,
that's an interesting question.
Do you feel like the movie thinks it's gross, or does the movie go, I love this, even though it is gross?
It's a love-hate relationship, I think. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of care and a lot of enjoyment of that, but it's also, I really like it's so much that I can't stand it. at times I feel is how the director kind of portrayed it. So
Like the movie knows that it's messing with you. Like the movie
Mhm.
wants you to look at this and go like, "Isn't that fucked up?" You know? It
Mhm.
knows what
Yeah.
it's doing.
Yeah, I think that the point is to sort of drag you through some of the worst things that we put on screen. Yeah, I think that is the point. I do think it's at its core it's a story about a father and son relationship, and I mean I think you can sort of try to come up with some sort of thing there. It's not. I mean, like, let me clear here. It's not. I don't think this is like an amazing film or whatever. But I did enjoy it, and I do think there is some really interesting parts of it. And yeah, but like I said, I mean, there is some sort of father son thing, and about how, this, having to deal with this this lunatic of a father who has like a a weird god complex of some sort. I just threatening to evict him in every argument that they have. I'm this close.
That's part of it. I was almost like looking for something to grab onto. Like, is it
Mhm.
this relationship? Is it this aesthetic? Is it this style of humor? Is there heart to the movie? I was trying to hold on to something. I feel like I was sort of grasping at air, you know? It just sort of happened in front of my eyes and I just had to witness it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think that there is value though in art that is like what's the opposite of what's the word I'm looking for? It's like the opposite of pleasure, you know, unpleasurable, I guess. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of value in like an artistic experience that's designed to make you uncomfortable. I will say there are other experiences that you can choose to have that will give you that experience, but in a deeper, like more affecting way, I think. Like, for instance, pink flamingos, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
You take a little bit away, you take a little bit more away, you know, it affects you, and I think in a little bit of a deeper way than this movie would.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's comparing it to a classic, like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a little unfair. That's a little unfair. But they are in the same genre. They're
Yes.
trying to do similar things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Harrison. I guess unless doesn't even have any other notes that they I want to talk about for this. I don't have much of anything else. Yeah, I agree that the actors. That to me that is the standout sort of thing. Is like I think the actors, as Harrison said, give 120%. I mean, like that. I mean, it is a all of the performances are bold. I mean, yeah, like the nudity in this is is they go for it in a lot of senses. It's a very bold. I mean, to be able to trust in the film that you're making to do that and to do all the things that they do in the film that's a very trusting thing you have to do, and that's incredible that they did that, and yeah.
Props to everybody involved, and like it's really like inspiring that a group of people can get together and make something like this and then like put it out there and like sell it and make it like a real distribution kind of thing, because these people are fucking weirdos, and that makes me happy inside that like, you know, something like this can exist, you know, and that they found each other. That's heartening. That's definitely heartening.
Cade, I see where you're going for your next film.
Yeah.
That level of inspiration and
yeah. No. Yeah. I mean,
although when I Google search Greasy Strangler, the first thing that popped up was Greasy Strangler 2. So
I know
we
I
might
looked
be
at.
getting more.
I was wondering that because it does pop up like that and everything, but
Yeah.
I can't see any sort of thing about where, because I was like, is there a second one? And couldn't see
The people have disco fever. They need more Greasy Strangler.
Yeah.
You know, they're
exactly.
begging for it.
Okie dokie.
I
Harrison.
thought Elijah Wood produced this.
Yes, yeah. Elijah Wood did produce this.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
Maybe he needs more of this.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I love when people get like super rich, like doing a franchise, and then they just decide to use that money to like make weird shit. That's awesome. That's great. Daniel Radcliffe.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
So this movie. I wouldn't recommend it. I would say if you love pure unadulterated filth, uh, and if you want a spectacle, go for it. I'm not going to recommend it just because it made my stomach churn too much.
Mm-hmm. And what are you going to give it?
Let's give it a hot dog.
Okay. I don't know which one. I have three. Oh, wait a second. I don't know. I have three. Both of you gave it three dresses.
Symbols. Just go with three different phallic emojis.
I got. There's your hot dog.
Chili cheese.
Great.
Give it a chili cheese dog.
Luca, would you recommend this movie, and what would you rate it?
Woof. This would be a hard movie to recommend. I don't, even like the people who like this kind of thing, I don't think I would recommend it because it's not like, I don't think it's like exemplary of the genre. I would, however, recommend this genre to people. Like, find gross out movies that are really, really good gross out movies, because those like can unlock something for you, you know, like a different style of comedy when it's done well. I urge you to go check out John Waters movies. Greasy Strangler was entertaining from like a performance aspect, from a production design aspect, from an editing perspective. I don't know. It's a bewildering movie. Watch it on something. I think you'll have a great time. I think you'll be fascinated, especially if you're a filmmaker. But I think literally anybody who's not already into this shit, stay far away from this movie. You don't want nothing to do with that, you know? I will give it 1 cup of Java with no grease.
That's good.
And I wanted to say that so bad because this movie reminded me that some people call coffee Java, and that's awesome. And I want to bring that back, and I'm going to start calling coffee Java again.
That's good. I like that.
I just think that's fun. That's just fun.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah. No grease.
No grease. Why don't people put grease in their coffee? That's gross.
I'm not the greasy
I'm concerned,
by the way.
My only son isn't putting grease in his coffee.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's an insane film. I mean, this is, I mean, most people know you're not going to like this movie. I think this is a movie that most people would never care for. I find there are the moments for me though that I really liked. It did outweigh the bad. I think that it kind of falls into, like I said before, it turns into a movie I'm not really all that interested in, but I love just the avenues that it takes place in. I mean, if you like comedy, like it falls into that genre that you see in a lot of things, and especially for like indie films of like, we're going to do almost like a comedy odyssey type thing where like they go around and they meet a character and they do that, and then it goes to this, and here's the zany character that you meet. And I think it's one of the better ones of that, because I've seen that done poorly in so many film festivals. Everyone makes that film.
Me and you and everyone you know. Me and you and everyone you know.
And
it's the Napoleon Dynamite thing.
Yes. And I do think that this does. I really did. I really did like it. I found it, but at the same time, it was one of the grossest things I've ever seen ever. And I'm not a fan of gross out stuff, but I found this to be incredibly funny, and it was so interesting to watch the performances. And if you want like interesting, like, unknowns doing like interesting performances and character work, but also like it not being in the remote realm of realisticness, I then watch this. It's a fun, interesting film. So I give this movie a bullshit artist.
Damn, that required some setup. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good punchline. That got funnier over the course of the movie. I'll give it that. Like, the more times they said it, the more times I was like, yeah, bullshit artist.
Yep.
Well, it ramped up, like they said it like a few, like it was in the opening scene, and then it's like, and then
And they just started throwing it back and forth.
and then in the big like fallout, scene, they say it like 27 times, and it's hilarious, and they have
Like,
the
to them,
exact
it's like
same.
the worst thing that you could say.
Yes. And the fact is, the matter is that they struggle to come up with something that was worse than it because they want to like elevate it, and they don't know how to like. So like they're like horseshit artists.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's the kind of movie that'd make a blind person take off their glasses and look around the room bewildered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The car wash. Yeah,
I thought you were going to say
the car wash owner is definitely a stand-in for everyone's reactions.
Oh yeah. I thought you were gonna say it would cure their blindness. They would finally see for the first time.
I thought you were
and
saying
they regret everything. They want to be blind again.
That's what I thought you were saying. Yeah, that they would see this. A blind person would see this movie and say, "I want to go back.
Take me back."
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
good special effects. Great special effects.
Yeah, no, yeah. And then I think of like, there's interesting like when he's
the eyeballs,
the spotlight where he's like dancing on the down in the darkness, and that spotlight comes on. There's interesting little, and he's just like dancing around. Like there's interesting scenes throughout this movie that are very interesting. And then the score. I have to mention that and didn't mention that, like the fact that it's the music, it's the same thing over and over again. I don't know. I like a synth score, and it's the fact it's like this little cheap little synth score over and over again. I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it's purposefully dissonant, and all these voices going like la 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 la. Yeah. Oh man, don't watch this at like the end of a tough day. My God, Like prepare yourself if you're gonna sit down and do it.
Yeah.
Have a light dinner. Have a light, like eat something light.
See, I watched In Fabric first, and it found it to be, very like slow and like I mean it's intentional, but it's like okay, I get it. Here's our creepy dress again. And I recommended the movie and everything, but like it was just it's one of those very kind of slow pace. And then for this one to sort of come in,
it didn't need so many scenes like at the bank teller. Like, she's crying, and then she goes back to greet the customer perfectly. Oh, she's showing off her cute dress and going back to greet the customer perfectly.
And we're set in the same sort of thing. We're in the same environments. There's 4 sets that this whole thing takes place in. And then this one, for it to be like every scene's different, and it's different characters every time we're kind of piecing together until it falls into this, we're just inside of a home with these 3 people. But up to that point, like it's like all different, and it's breathing at a brisk pace, and like everyone's doing like these different choices. And to me, like it was all new, and I'm like, oh great. Like it seemed it was I did end up liking it more than the other film just because it was so wildly different.
It's interesting how these 2 movies were kind of the antidotes to each other,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In terms of pace, in terms of style, in terms of, what it's going for, in terms of like, I don't know, one of them was a horror movie and one of them wasn't a horror movie, but the one that wasn't a horror movie was way more horrific.
Yeah. 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 No, I mean, yeah. And it's interesting. And then how, like, I mean, one's obviously more about themes and everything, but then I don't know, it's interesting. It's to show it's to show the broad scope. I think they both have horror, they both have comedic elements. They just sort of, and then they both have like this offbeat sort of premise and everything. And then some people dial it up to 10 or 11, and then dial the other parts down. But it just shows the breadth of the genre.
Yeah. Also, I will say, both of these movies came out at the end of the 2010s decade.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if their proximity to each other or like when they came out has anything to say about like the attitudes around the movies. But it's just kind of interesting that one is like a genre pastiche and one is just completely disconnected from reality. And, maybe it's maybe it's exemplary of certain filmmakers taking like an indie level budget and trying to do something visionary with it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, I think that it's interesting to see where we were at those points and what. Yeah. I mean, what Britain was at when In Fabric was done. I mean, there's a lot of interesting, stuff there. Anyways, that's the Greasy Strangler and In Fabric. We're gonna play our musical interlude, and then we'll head into preview time. So don't go anywhere.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
Well, so next week, Diane will be back next week. We'll have our frequent guest, Ava. She'll be on here too. We'll be talking about biopics or biopics, however you want to say, about 1960s icons. That's what we're calling it. So we're talking First Man, Damien Chazelle's First Man, and Love and Mercy, which is the Beach Boys.
Oh, damn, that's a good double feature. Those are some good picks.
I've never seen either one of them, so I've seen everything else Damien Chazelle's done, but I never saw First Man.
I think you'll have a fascinating time comparing and contrasting both of them.
Well, great. That's perfect. That's what we try to do here, and I like that. Yeah, that's intentional. Yeah. So we'll watch those. Watch them wherever. First Man, I think you'll have to rent. I don't know about Love and Mercy. Let me check that real quick. But yeah, no, it's should be fun. We only have it's on Stars, so if you have Stars, then you can watch it. But we only have 2 episodes left this season, so it's next week, and then we have one more after that. So before we take a slumber, so prepare for that. We're excited to end on a high note, and we'll also have our bonus episode where we rank our top ones, what were our favorites and least favorites of the season. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah, it's exciting. Well, that's that. Luca, thank you for coming on here and everything.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I love talking movies, and I love talking with you guys.
Oh, well, thank you. Where can people follow you and find out information about your work?
Yeah. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, both at Luca Silver 01. I post a lot of updates there. I try to promote my different like art projects on there, and hopefully I can get enough sort of like artistic career type momentum going that I don't have to use like social media platforms to promote my work. Maybe someday soon it will be advertised in more of like a holistic way, So if you want to keep up with what I'm working on and what I'm doing, follow me on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah. Soon you'll have like a brand people writing marketing. They'll run your accounts for you.
Hey, soon I'd like everybody to go to the movie
social
theater
media for you.
Yeah. Soon I just like everybody to go to the movie theater and see what I'm working on. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be awesome?
But don't you wish that Scorsese was on Twitter?
Oh God! but Francesca Scorsese's on Twitter, and he's on Instagram sometimes, and that's good shit. I love him so much. He's an adorable man.
Interesting. And Harrison, thank you, of course, being on here again. Did you enjoy? You've been on here a few times this season, but you won't be on here again. So, did you enjoy this season of movies, Harrison?
I won't enjoy the rest of it, but I enjoyed up to this point. No, it was a really good, well-rounded season. You went all over the place as far as 2010s movies are concerned, and so like the endless variety that is Double Feature Movie Club, I sincerely appreciate, and yeah, have had a lot of fun.
Yeah, what sticks out? Would you say that was Under the Skin your favorite one that you watched?
Mm, yeah, but like by a hair.
Hmm.
Um, Under the Skin, I liked quite a lot. In Fabric, I liked quite a lot. Um, Inherent Vice, I'd say, is probably my favorite, but I don't even remember if that's this season or not.
That was last season.
Yeah, so
But yeah, no, and then yeah, I was trying to think what the other ones that you were on. Yeah, you were on the first episode were Big Eyes and Wizard of Lies. So.
Mhm.
Well, yes, everyone. So, Double Feature Movie Club has a Instagram and Twitter. If you don't know, you can follow it at Double Feature MC. We post content there, specifically on Instagram. We do a 60-second review, so we'll have a short little review of what we thought about these up there. You can also follow me on TikTok at the K Thomas. It gets posted there as well, or on Instagram at the K Thomas. If you're listening to this as a podcast, you can always join us on our live stream. We are here Sundays at 6 p.m. Central on youtube.com/Cade Thomas. If you're watching the live stream or the replay later, you can always listen to us as a podcast, available next day, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Harrison and Luca, for joining us. I had a fun time. This was an interesting pairing, and I enjoyed dissecting it with the two of you.
Definitely. Right up my
me
alley.
too.
Great. Well, see everyone next week. Bye.
Bye.